This is a short guide regarding the Incinerate Sorcerer. So in order to understand how this build works, you first need to understand what a Burn Sorcerer is and what a Burn Sorcerer is not. So in order to do that, we need to look at the Paragon board Burning Instinct. So the notable nodes here in this board are that it has 2 damage reduction nodes here and here. It also has damage reduction nodes to elites and armor nodes, and it also has execute chance for injured non-elites. So what this board tells us is that a Burn Sorcerer is designed to be tanky, and at the same time it does slow enough damage to constantly be within the injured state. So what this means is that a Burn Sorcerer is not a glass cannon. So if you're looking for a build that can instantly delete mobs in your screen, so this is not the build for you. If you are trying to do Incinerate with like 5k armor, it's not gonna work. You'll get one-shotted. So this survivability is core to a Burn Sorcerer. So if you don't have that, then you will likely just die from trying. So in order to understand why this build works is because of this armor, 7.4k. So typically Iron Sorcerers around my level for your meta ice and lighting builds will have around 5k armor. So to put into perspective what 5k armor is, 5k armor gives you around 30% damage reduction by level 100. So this is very low, and it's the reason why most ice and lighting builds get one-shotted by level 100. So this build is different in that it has lots of armor. So in my case, I have around 7.4k or 60% damage reduction at level 100. So this allows us to tank multiple hits. You can even tank with 10 plus elites hitting you at the same time. It won't even break your barrier. So these are bread and butter. So without this build will not work. So with that out of the way, so let's move on the skill tree. So for the skill assignment, we are using Incinerate, Firewall, Inferno, Frost Nova, Frostbolt, and Ice Armor. Firebolt and Ice Armor. So for Firebolt, we take both its upgrades, so Enhanced Firebolt and Flickering Firebolt. The reason why we take Flickering is because there are instances when we may run out of mana. So these are very rare instances, so this is a quick way to regenerate mana. It might seem like it's low, it's like 2 per hit, but remember that Firebolt pierces through all burning enemies, and since we're burning the entire screen, when we use our Firebolt, we'll likely hit like more than 5 enemies, so it instantly gives us 10 plus mana. And then for the core skills, we max out Incinerate, and we take the Enhanced Incinerate. And then for the last upgrade, this depends on your playstyle. So if you are you find that you're dying a lot, so you can take Destructive Incinerate. So this reduces all damage done to you by 20%. And then you find that you are not having any problems with survivability, you can take Greater Incinerate. So this will increase your damage since you are crowd controlling enemies. And then for Fireball, we take at least 1 point here for the enchantment. So we are using Fireball and Fireball as our enchantment. And then for Devastation, Elemental Dominance. So in my case, I took 1 point in Devastation, 3 points in Elemental Dominance. But these are flex points, so 3 points in Fireball, 4 points in Elemental Dominance and Devastation are your flex points. So you can assign them to other skills. If you find that you are having trouble surviving, you can put them in defensive skills. So it's up to you. So up to your playstyle. So for defensive skills, the important skill here is ice armor. So we need ice armor and enhanced ice armor. So for shimmering ice armor, this depends on your playstyle. If you can reliably keep your barrier up, your ice armor up, so you have a 15% chance to freeze your enemies. So what that means is 1 out of 7 hits will freeze an enemy. So this is very important against elites or like heavy hitters. So you freezing them before they even touch you is you'll be doing bonus damage to them since they're frozen, and so that means they're CC'd. Then for Frost Nova, we take 1 point each for the vulnerable upgrade. And then for conjuration, so we only take aligned elements, so this 1 point for 40% damage reduction is pretty good investment. And then for the mastery skills, we take Firewall, full points in Firewall until the Mage Firewall, so this keeps enemies burning for 3 seconds even after leaving the Firewall. So we want to keep enemies burning as long as possible, so this is a good upgrade for us. And then for the passives, we take full points in Inner Flames and full points in Crippling Flames. So these are since we'll be staying healthy most of the time, so this is useful for us. And then Crippling Flames just to get a bonus immobilization. And for Devouring Blaze, we don't need this because burn doesn't crit, so there's no point in taking this skill. And then for the ultimate skills, we take Inferno all the way to Supreme Inferno. And then for the fire passives, we take all of this, so these are required. So if you take any point less, it might hurt your mana sustain and survivability. So in my case, I have 3 points here from the amulet, so this is a very big multiplier. So you'll often notice if you don't have the skill that you're doing okay damage to Imo. But once you take the skill, your raw damage will get multiplied by 30%. So you see significant increases in your damage because of this skill. Then lastly, for is Permafrost and Hoarfrost, so these are optional skill points. So you can assign them to anywhere else. So in my case, if you want to kill things faster with Frost Nova, so you can take this skill since Frozen is counted as both shield and frozen, so you get 27% increased damage to frozen enemies. And lastly, for our key passive, we take Combustion. So this is how we scale our damage. So it's also important to note that if you take this passive, that you can't just channel Incinerate like this. Channel it like that. If you're gonna do that, you're not gonna maximize your damage because Combustion requires at least 3 damage burn sources. So usually you want to lead with Firewall, Firebolt, Incinerate. That's how you maximize your damage. And moving on with our Paragon boards. So for Paragon board, we start first with the glyphs. So the most important glyphs for Burn Sorcerer is a Pyromaniac and a Torch. So Pyromaniac, the important thing about Pyromaniac is the additional bonus. So this increases your fire damage by 10%. 10% may not seem a lot, but this is a multiplier to your fire damage. So what that means is typically a Burn Sorcerer will have around, in my case I have around 529% damage with fire. So 10% increase to this means I get 53% increase to damage with fire. Then this is for the fire damage. Now I'm not sure if it also applies to fire damage over time, but if it does, so we get an additional 59%. So for just for in just one glyph, we get around more than 100% bonus in our fire damage. So it's a pretty good investment to have. Then the next one is Torch. So here you can see I have here for the Torch. So you can see I have 49 out of 25 willpower, and it gives me 85% fire damage over time. So this is the burning damage. So this is a non-conditional modifier. So this is a very strong addition to your damage. And then aside from the insane fire damage over time, so we also get a very strong additional bonus. So this additional damage may not seem a lot, so 12%, but once you get to play this build, this will be the difference between doing 100k to a single burning enemy and 200k to a group of like burning enemies. And next is the Enchanter. So we have 3 core glyphs: Pyromania, Torch, and Enchanter. So the purpose of our Enchanter is just to maximize the non-conditional modifiers as much as possible. So this still only level 10. So once it gets to level 20, it will give you around 60%, 70% non-physical damage. So these are non-conditional modifiers. Again, it's a very strong modifier. The additional bonus doesn't matter much, but we're just putting this glyph in for the non-conditional. And then the remaining glyph slots are optional, so depends on your playstyle. So if you are finding that you are having lots of issue with mana, you can take the Unleash glyph. So this increases your damage and mana regeneration while after spending 50 mana. So while you're trying to incinerate, you'll be spending 50 mana within like 3 seconds, so you'll always activate this glyph. And then another thing you can take is Exploit. So you find that you don't have enough vulnerable damage, you can take Exploit to buff your vulnerable damage. And then another glyph you can take is Imbiber. So you find that you can stay around 50-80% health, you can take Imbiber. And lastly, for Control, so if you can get like a very high uptime in your Frozen Nova, in your Frost Nova, so you can take Control. So this will increase your damage by around 30%. So in our case, in my case, I only have level 1 in Frost Nova, so it has a cooldown of 24 seconds. So you can put more points here. So at level 5, this will go down to around 19 seconds. So if you do that, you can take Control to increase your damage. And then next is for the gear. So for the gear, for the defensive aspects, so these are all required. So for helm, chest, and pants, we want the Snow Veil aspect, so this gives unstoppable to ice armor. We also want Disobedience. So the important thing to note about Disobedience is that in a burn build, so you can reach max stacks in like 3 seconds or less. So you often reach max stacks because even with just a simple firebolt, Incinerate, just do that and you'll be max stack pretty easily. And then for the another important aspect is the Protector. So the most common way for this build to die is from elites. So getting a huge barrier when you're damaging elite allows you to channel Incinerate without worrying about getting killed. Then for the offensive aspects, we only have 2. So we have Inner Count, Inner Gloves. So this increases the damage by 30% while standing still. And then the Conflagration in a 200. So this will increase our damage by 60% while channeling Incinerate. So we use a 200 for the crowd control damage and to double the Conflagration bonus. Then for amulet, this is required in the amulet, so this the taking direct damage and 9% chance to reset the cooldown of one of our defensive skills. So you'll often find when you play this build that you enter a room, 10 plus mobs hitting you, you use ice armor, then immediately it gets reset. So it's that good. So you use Frost Nova, it gets reset. That's how that's the reason why you only have level 1 in both Ice Armor and Frost Nova, because we have a free reset from this amulet. And for rings, we take Mother's Embrace. So this is a powerful aspect in that we refunds 30% of our mana when hitting more than 5. So note that for Incinerate, this counts everything in the range of the beam and in your AoE in close around you. So this is the effect of the enhanced Incinerate. Then lastly, for our other ring, we have the Incendiary aspect. So this gives us 10 mana on lucky hit. And then for the stats, the most important part of this is you want at least 3. So you can get total armor bonuses from 4 possible gear slots. So helm, chest, pants, and amulet. So you want at least 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 should have armor. So in my case, I have 4 out of 4, so this is why I have 7.4k armor. But if you only have 3, you get around 6.5k, 6.8k armor, just pretty okay at level 100. And then for the stats, ultimately it depends on what you get. So, but as a rule of thumb, for this build is we want at least 1 damage reduction from close, from distant, and from injured. So I'm missing injured here, but ideally you want injured because there will be lots of times where you're almost dead. So having an injured there to ensure you stay alive is very good. You also want at least one in all damage reduction. And then for the elites and burning, this is all coming from the Paragon board and the skill align the elements. So you can see 52% for elites and 27% from burning. So it's a very, very strong damage reduction. Then for the boots, I also have stat here for dodge chance against distant enemies. The reason why I took this is because most distant enemies use magical attacks. So for magical attacks, our armor only has a 50% effect. So even though we have high armor, we're still going to take massive damage from a magical attack. So this is why we have this. So it gives us 17% chance to dodge the magical attack, so which is around 1 out of 5 attacks, and which will help tremendously with the survivability. And then lastly, for the mana, there's no requirement. You don't need resource generation. You can see here I have 0 resource generation, and then I have just a 10% mana cost reduction. So if you can get more mana cost reduction, that's good. If you do that, you can maybe remove one of the mana aspects here and replace it with the damage aspect, like an Edge Master. So it's up to you. But mana stats are not needed. So here you see I have like 103 base mana, so that's just it. But you can see from my other videos that there's no problem sustaining mana, even with 0 mana regen stats. And then lastly, for movement speed, this is fortunately required, so you need 1 stat for movement speed. Ideally you have around 20% bonus, so you don't want any less or any more. So just 1 stat is enough, and this will help you evade attacks and get out of CC and other stuff. So this is a very powerful stat for a Burn Sorcerer. And for Lucky Hit and Lucky Hit mana, these are not needed, so these are optional. And then for damage, lastly for damage, so you can see here we only have like 2 damage sources, or gloves and a staff. So for the gloves, we want max bonus to ranks for Incinerate, and for the rest of the stats, it's up to you, up to your preference. So here I have crit chance, but burn doesn't crit, so this is useless to this build. And then for the staff, so you want core skill, crit strike, and vulnerable. So these are the best in slot for staff. And then for the rings, you want so the rule of thumb is just one crit damage, crit strike damage. So here, the reason why we take crit strike damage is because of the Burning Instinct. Burning Instinct legendary node. So this scales your damage, your burning damage, based on your crit strike damage. So at 1000 intelligence, you'll get around 300% scaling of your crit strike damage. So what is important to note here is that this conversion, it converts a conditional modifier, a crit strike damage, to a non-conditional modifier, burning damage. So typically, you might have to decide between fire damage and crit strike damage. So in those instances, you want to take crit strike damage, because in this case, so you have 30%, say you have 30% crit strike damage, then it gets scaled by 300% and converted to a burning damage. So this gets translated to around 90% burning damage. So this is way more than the 20% fire damage maximum that you can get. So 4 times more. This is why you want to prioritize crit strike damage. Doesn't matter if you don't get vulnerable or fire damage, you just want crit strike damage. That's the most important thing. And for vulnerable damage, as you stack your non-conditionals, you want to get some vulnerable damage, So it's not really needed early on, but as you get to late end game, so you'll unlock slots for vulnerable. So in my case, I still have to unlock the Frigid Fate board. So the Frigid Fate board will still give you around 90% vulnerable bonus. So this is where you'll get most of your vulnerable stats. And then the rest of this is just scaling from int, and then the damage with fire, damage with burning, this is just coming from the Burning Instinct Paragon line. So that's the core of the gear. So for our gears, you can see we have 4 aspects for defenses, 2 for offenses, and then 2 for mana. So if you have Flame Scar, so I personally don't have a Flame Scar, so I can't really test if it's strong enough. But if you do have the Flame Scar and you want to play with the Flame Scar, so you want to put the Conflagration aspect in your focus. And that will be it for the gear. And then ultimately, your damage as a Incinerate Sorcerer will depend on how you play this Sorcerer. So typically, I start with Firewall, Firebolt, and only then do I channel the Incinerate. So if you're going to just channel Incinerate like that, it's not gonna do a lot of damage. You want to maximize, to burn as many enemies as possible, to maximize your glyph and combustion key passive bonuses. And that's it for the Burn Sorcerer guide. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this build. So if you're tired of getting one shot in your ice shard build or lightning build, so you can play this build, and it's a very stress free. You can do high nightmare dungeons without dying. So at level 100, you can probably do all the way until low 60 and not worry about dying. So yeah, it's a pretty casual way to play a sorcerer. And that's it. So thank you and goodbye.